Jake Morrison stepped off the transport shuttle and onto Celestial Station Alpha for the first time. The massive space station hung in the darkness like a small moon, its lights glowing against the stars. He carried only a small bag with his belongings. Everything else he needed was supposedly waiting in his quarters. He was nervous. Jake had trained for 2 years to become a cultural liaison, but nothing really prepared him for this. Celestial Station Alpha was home to dozens of alien species, real aliens, not the kind from movies. Some breathed different air, some didn't breathe at all. Some looked almost human, while others were so strange that Jake's brain hurt trying to understand their shape. The humans had only joined the galactic community 5 years ago. Before that, Earth thought it was alone in the universe. Now Jake knew better. There were thousands of intelligent species out there, and most of them thought humans were primitive and barely worth noticing. His first assignment was simple: observe, learn, and try not to embarrass the human race. No pressure. Jake made his way through the station's corridors. The gravity felt slightly lighter than Earth's, making each step feel bouncy. The walls were made of some material that seemed to glow softly with its own light. He passed several aliens in the hallway. A tall being with blue skin nodded at him. Something that looked like a floating jellyfish drifted past without acknowledging him at all. After finding his quarters and dropping off his bag, Jake decided to explore. He wasn't tired, despite the long journey. His body clock was confused anyway, jumping between time zones and planets. The observation deck called to him. He had seen pictures, but he wanted to see it with his own eyes. When the doors opened, Jake's breath caught in his throat. The entire outer wall was transparent, offering a view of space that made him feel impossibly small and wonderfully alive at the same time. A few other beings were scattered around the massive room, but it was mostly empty. Jake walked slowly toward the viewing area, his eyes trying to take in everything at once. Stars stretched in every direction. A nearby nebula painted the darkness with shades of purple and blue. Then he saw her. She stood alone near the far end of the observation deck, her back to him. Even from a distance, something about her made Jake's heart beat faster, the way she stood, perfectly still, watching the stars. The way the light from space played across her form, the graceful line of her shoulders, and the way her dark hair fell past them. Jake moved closer without thinking, drawn forward by something he couldn't name. He stopped about 20 feet away, not wanting to disturb her but unable to look away. "The most stunning woman I've ever seen," he whispered to himself. It should have been impossible for her to hear him across that distance, over the soft hum of the station's systems. But somehow, she did. She turned slowly, and Jake felt the universe shift around him. Her face was beautiful, yes, but that wasn't what made him freeze in place. It was her eyes. When they met his, Jake saw something that shouldn't be there. Something ancient. Something that had seen things no human should ever see. Her eyes were dark brown, perfectly normal in color, but filled with an emotion he couldn't identify. Sadness, curiosity, wonder. She smiled slightly, and Jake felt his mouth go dry. "Hello?" she said, her voice soft and warm. She had an accent he couldn't place, which was strange because Jake was good with accents. It sounded almost American, but not quite. Like someone who had learned English perfectly but had never actually lived on Earth. "Hi," Jake managed to say. He felt like an idiot. He was supposed to be a trained diplomat, and here he was, unable to form a complete sentence. "I'm Elena," she said, walking toward him. "Elena Voss." "Jake Morrison." He found his voice again. "Sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you." "You didn't," Elena said. "I was hoping someone would come." "It's more beautiful when you can share it with someone else." She gestured at the stars, and Jake looked out at them again. "Yeah," he agreed. "I've seen pictures, but it's not the same." "Pictures never are," Elena said. "You have to be here. You have to feel it." They stood in silence for a moment, both watching the slow dance of celestial bodies beyond the transparent wall. Jake wanted to say something clever, something memorable, but his mind was blank. "You're human," Elena said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah. Is it that obvious?" Elena smiled again. "You look at the stars differently than other species do. Most of them see resources or navigation points or mathematical problems. Humans see beauty first. It's refreshing." "What about you?" Jake asked. "You're human too, right?" There was the smallest pause. "I am," Elena said. "But I've been away from Earth for a long time." "Deep space assignment?" Jake guessed. "Something like that," Elena said. Her eyes never left his face. "What brings you to Celestial Station Alpha, Jake Morrison?" "I'm a cultural liaison. Basically, I'm here to learn about other species and try to help them understand humans better." "A bridge between worlds," Elena said softly. "That's important work." "What do you do?" Jake asked. "I study people," Elena said. "Cultures, behaviors, what makes different species unique. I'm an anthropologist in a way." They talked for hours. Jake lost track of time completely. Elena asked him questions about Earth, about human culture, about what it felt like to grow up knowing you might be alone in the universe and then discovering you weren't. Her questions were strange sometimes, asking about things that seemed obvious. What does music feel like? Why do humans create art? What's the purpose of poetry? But the way she listened made Jake want to answer. She focused on his words like they were the most important thing in the universe. When he talked about his childhood in California, about learning to surf, about his grandmother's cooking, Elena's face lit up with genuine fascination. "You make it sound magical," she said. "These simple, ordinary things." "Aren't they?" Jake said. "I mean, we get one life. Might as well find magic in it." Elena looked at him for a long moment. "Yes," she said quietly. "You might be right about that." When Jake finally checked the time, he was shocked to see that 4 hours had passed. "I should let you go," he said reluctantly. "Will you be here tomorrow?" Elena asked. "On the station? Yeah, I'm assigned here for the next 6 months. Then I'll see you again," Elena said. It sounded like a promise. As Jake walked back to his quarters that night, his mind raced. Something about Elena bothered him, like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. The way she talked about humans, the way she asked her questions, the strange depth in her eyes. But more than that, the way she made him feel, like he was part of something bigger than himself. Like every word he spoke mattered. He fell asleep thinking about her smile and wondering what secrets hid behind those ancient eyes. Over the next few days, Jake settled into his routine on the station. His official duties involved attending meetings with representatives from different species, learning their customs, and helping translate human behavior when it confused them. Humans confused aliens a lot, he discovered. The concept of fashion baffled a species that communicated through skin color changes. The idea of weekends made no sense to beings that didn't sleep. But whenever Jake had free time, he found himself at the observation deck, and every time Elena was there. They talked about everything. She wanted to know about human music, so Jake played her songs from Earth on his datapad. She closed her eyes and listened like she was memorizing every note. She asked about human art, so Jake showed her pictures of paintings and sculptures. She stared at them for long minutes, her expression unreadable. "Why do you create these things?" she asked one day, looking at an image of the Mona Lisa. "They serve no survival function. They don't help you find food or shelter or safety." Jake laughed. "Is that what other species think, that we only do things for survival?" "Most species are very practical," Elena said. "They create what they need, nothing more." "That sounds boring," Jake said. "We create because we can, because it makes life more than just surviving. It makes it worth living." Elena turned to look at him. "Worth living," she repeated softly. What an interesting concept. Jake was starting to realize that Elena wasn't like other people he'd met. She was brilliant, that was clear. She spoke at least a dozen languages fluently. She understood alien customs that Jake was still struggling to learn. She moved through the station like she belonged everywhere and nowhere at the same time. But there was something else. Something in the way she observed everything around her, like she was seeing it all for the first time, like she was learning what it meant to exist. One evening, Jake invited her to the station's recreation area. Humans had set up a small section with food from Earth and entertainment. A few other humans were there, playing cards and listening to music. Jake wanted Elena to see humans being themselves, relaxed and natural. She watched everything with intense focus. When someone laughed at a joke, she studied their face. When two people argued about which team would win a sports game back on Earth, she listened carefully to their tone. When someone put on a song and others started dancing, she watched like she was witnessing something sacred. "Dance with me," Jake said, offering his hand. Elena looked at his hand for a moment, then up at his face. "I don't know how." "Neither do I, really," Jake admitted. "That's not the point." She took his hand, and Jake pulled her gently into the small dancing area. Other couples moved around them, but Jake barely noticed. Elena was stiff at first, uncertain, but slowly she relaxed. Jake showed her the basic steps, and she picked them up instantly. They moved together, and Jake felt something shift between them. Elena was learning, he realized. Not just learning to dance, but learning what it meant to be close to someone, to trust someone, to let go. When the song ended, Elena didn't let go of his hand right away. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For sharing this with me, all of it." That night, as they walked back through the station's corridors, Jake noticed something. Several aliens stopped to watch Elena pass. They didn't stare at her beauty. They stared at her like they recognized something important, like she was someone significant. "Elena," Jake said carefully, "are you famous or something?" She smiled, but it was sad. "Not exactly." "Then what exactly?" Jake pressed. "People look at you like they know you." Elena stopped walking. They were in a quiet section of the station with no one else around. She turned to face him fully. "Can I trust you, Jake?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "Even if I'm not what I seem to be?" Jake's heart beat faster. "What do you mean?" Elena took a deep breath. "I need to show you something, but not here. Come with me." She led him to a private observation room, one of the smaller ones used for diplomatic meetings. When the door closed behind them, Elena walked to the center of the room and turned to face him. "What I'm about to tell you," she said, "will change everything you think you know. About me, about this station, about why I've been asking you all these questions." "Okay," Jake said, trying to stay calm. "I'm listening." "I'm not human," Elena said simply. Jake stared at her. "What?" "I'm not human," she repeated. "I'm a Lumini. We're a species of energy beings. We can take any form we choose. This," she gestured at herself, "is not my real body. It's a form I created." Jake's mind raced. "You're an alien?" "Yes. But you look perfectly human. You talk like a human. I've been studying humans for a long time," Elena said. "Decades. I've watched your world from afar. I've learned everything I could about your species. And I created this form because I wanted to experience what it means to be human, to be seen as human, to connect with a human." "Why?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Elena's expression was hard to read. Sad, maybe, or lonely. "Because," she said, "your species fascinates me. In all my existence, across all the civilizations I've observed, I've never encountered anything quite like humanity. You're chaotic and emotional and illogical and creative in ways that shouldn't work. And yet you thrive. You make meaning where there should be none. You create beauty for no reason except that it pleases you. You hope when logic says you should despair. She stepped closer to him. I wanted to understand that, not just observe it, but feel it. So I became human as much as I could. And I found you. Found me? Jake repeated. You were looking for me specifically? No, Elena said. But when I heard you whisper those words that first night, when you saw beauty in me without knowing what I truly was, I knew I wanted to know you, really know you. Jake didn't know what to say. His mind was trying to process everything. Elena wasn't human. She was an alien wearing a human face. She had been studying him, learning from him. Everything they had shared was part of some kind of experiment. Are you angry? Elena asked softly. Jake thought about it. He should be angry, probably. He should feel used or deceived. But when he looked at Elena, at the genuine emotion in her eyes, at the vulnerability in her voice, he couldn't find anger. No, he said finally. I'm not angry. But I need to understand. Why tell me this now? Elena's face became serious. Because I need your help, Jake. Humanity's help. There's something happening in the galaxy, something that threatens every species, including yours, and I believe that humans might be the only ones who can stop it. Elena explained everything while Jake listened in stunned silence. She told him about the Luminae, an ancient species that had existed for millions of years. They were observers, witnesses to the rise and fall of countless civilizations. They never interfered, only watched and recorded. It was their purpose, their reason for existing. But something had changed. Something was threatening to end all observation, all life, all existence in large parts of the galaxy. We call it the Void, Elena said. It appeared about 50 years ago by galactic standards, a region of space where everything simply stops existing. Not destroyed, not consumed, just gone. Matter, energy, thought itself. All of it ceases to be when it touches the void. Is it a weapon? Jake asked. Something created by a hostile species? We don't think so, Elena said. The Luminae have studied it extensively. It's not technological. It's something else. Something we don't fully understand. What does this have to do with humans? Jake asked. Elena sat down, and Jake sat beside her. The void is growing, she said. Slowly but steadily. At current rates, it will consume a quarter of the galaxy within 200 years. Many inhabited worlds will be destroyed, including Earth. Jake felt cold. Have the other species tried to stop it? Yes. Every advanced civilization in the galaxy has thrown their best minds and their greatest technology at the problem. The Virillian Empire, the oldest known species, has tried for decades. The collective mind, a species of linked consciousness spanning millions of individuals, has attempted to understand it. The machine intelligence of the architects has calculated every possible solution. And, Jake asked, though he could guess the answer from Elena's expression. Nothing works. Every logical approach has failed. Every technological solution is useless. The void doesn't respond to force or reason or mathematics. It just continues to exist and grow. They sat in silence for a moment. Jake tried to process the magnitude of what he was hearing, an unstoppable force that would eventually destroy Earth. Billions of lives, centuries of human history, every song and painting and story ever created, all of it would simply cease to exist. So why tell me? Jake asked. If the greatest minds in the galaxy can't stop it, what can I do? Elena turned to look at him, and her eyes were bright with an emotion that looked almost like hope. The Luminae have observed something, she said. A pattern in the history of civilizations. Most species in the galaxy are logical. They're efficient. They do what makes sense. They follow patterns and rules and rational thought. And humans don't? Jake guessed. Humans are different, Elena said. Throughout your history, you've done the impossible. Not because it was logical, but because you believed you could. You've achieved things that every analysis said were impossible. You've won battles you should have lost. You've survived disasters that should have destroyed you. You've created civilizations on a planet that tried very hard to kill you. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Do you know what makes humans unique, Jake? It's not your technology. It's not your intelligence. Every species has those in some form. What makes you unique is your capacity for irrational hope. Irrational hope? Jake repeated. The ability to believe in solutions when logic says there are none. The willingness to try when reason says you should quit. The strength to love knowing you'll lose what you love. The courage to create meaning in a universe that offers none. Other species lost that quality millions of years ago. They became too logical, too efficient. They forgot how to hope for the impossible. Elena turned back to him. The Lumini believe that if any species can face the void, it's humanity. Not because you're smarter or stronger, but because you're willing to try things that make no logical sense. Because you see problems as challenges instead of impossibilities. Because you make meaning where none exists. Jake stood up and walked to stand beside her. That's a lot of faith to put in a species that only invented space travel a few centuries ago. I know, Elena said, but I've been watching humans for decades, Jake. I've seen what you're capable of. I've studied your art and your music and your stories. I've learned about your history, your struggles, your triumphs, and I've spent the last week getting to know you, really know you. Every conversation we've had has convinced me more that I'm right. About what? Jake asked. That humans are worth believing in, Elena said simply. That you might be able to do what every other species couldn't. That your irrational, emotional, chaotic approach to problems might be exactly what's needed. Jake looked out at the stars, thinking about everything Elena had said, an impossible threat, the fate of the galaxy, the weight of billions of lives. It should have been terrifying. It was terrifying. But somewhere under the fear, Jake felt something else. He felt challenged. What do you need from me? He asked. Elena smiled, and it was the first truly happy expression Jake had seen on her face. I need you to help me convince your leaders that this is real, that the threat is serious, and that humanity needs to be part of the solution. They're going to think I'm crazy, Jake said. Probably, Elena agreed. But you're good at making people listen, Jake. You're good at building bridges between different worlds. That's why you're here. And if I can convince them? Jake asked. What then? Then we assemble a team, Elena said. Not the kind of team the other species would choose. Not the most logical or the most qualified by galactic standards. We choose humans who think differently, who create, who imagine, who hope. We send them to face the void. That's suicide, Jake said flatly. Maybe, Elena admitted. But it's also the only chance we have. The Lumini have run the calculations. Every purely logical approach has a 0% chance of success. But a human approach? She shrugged. We can't calculate the odds. It's too unpredictable, too irrational. And that's exactly why it might work. Jake took a deep breath. Okay, he said. I'll help you. But I need you to promise me something. What? No more secrets. If we're going to do this, if I'm going to convince people to risk their lives on a crazy plan, you need to be honest with me. About everything. Elena nodded. I promise. No more secrets. Good, Jake said. Then something occurred to him. Wait, you chose that human form. You made yourself look like that. Why? Why choose to be beautiful? Elena's expression became soft. Because I wanted to be seen the way humans see each other. I wanted to understand what it means when someone looks at you and thinks you're stunning. Not because of what you can do or what you know, but just because of who you are. I wanted to feel what it means to be admired, to be desired, to matter to someone for reasons that have nothing to do with logic or function. And did you? Jake asked. Did you feel it? Yes, Elena whispered. When you whispered those words that first night, when you looked at me like I was the most beautiful thing you'd ever seen, I felt it. And it was more wonderful and more terrifying than anything I'd experienced in millions of years of existence. Jake reached out and took her hand. It felt real, warm, human. For what it's worth, he said, you are the most stunning woman I've ever seen, even knowing what you really are. Elena squeezed his hand gently. Thank you, she said. That means more than you know. The next day, Jake sent an urgent message to Admiral Lisa Grant, the highest-ranking human officer in the Earth Defense Fleet. He requested a private video conference, marking it as critical priority. It took 3 hours for the response to come, but when it did, the Admiral agreed to speak with him. Admiral Grant appeared on the screen in Jake's quarters. She was in her 50s, with gray hair cut short and eyes that missed nothing. Jake had met her once during his training, and she had intimidated him thoroughly. Lieutenant Morrison, she said without preamble, your message said this was critical. I hope you're not wasting my time. No, ma'am, Jake said. I have information about a threat to Earth and the entire galaxy. I need to bring someone to speak with you, someone who can explain it better than I can. Someone? The Admiral's eyes narrowed. Who? Her name is Elena Voss. She's a Lumine, an ancient species of energy beings. She's been studying humanity, and she has information about something called the Void. The Admiral was silent for a long moment. A Lumini wants to speak with me about a galactic threat, and she approached you, a junior liaison officer? Yes, ma'am. Why you? Jake hesitated. I think she believes I'll listen with an open mind, and she believes humans might be able to help with a problem that has stumped every other species in the galaxy. Admiral Grant leaned back in her chair. The Lumini are real? I've heard rumors, but I thought they were myths. They're real, Jake confirmed. And this is serious, Admiral. If Elena is right, we have about 200 years before the Void reaches Earth, but it's already destroying other worlds. The Admiral studied him through the screen. You believe this alien? Yes, ma'am, I do. Bring her to Earth, Admiral Grant said finally. To Fleet Command in Geneva. I'll arrange security clearance and a meeting with the Defense Council. They'll want to hear this directly. Thank you, Admiral. Morrison, the Admiral said before ending the call. If this turns out to be some kind of deception or alien manipulation, your career is over. Understood? Understood, ma'am. But it's not. I promise you that. 2 days later, Jake and Elena boarded a transport ship bound for Earth. The journey would take 3 days through a series of jump gates. Elena had never been to Earth, she told him. She had only observed it from orbit and through the data she collected. Are you nervous? Jake asked as they settled into their seats. Yes, Elena admitted. I've spent decades studying your world, but actually going there is different. It's like the difference between reading about music and hearing it for yourself. You'll love it, Jake said. Even with all its problems, Earth is special. I know, Elena said. That's why we need to save it. The journey passed quickly. Elena spent most of the time asking Jake more questions about Earth. What did rain feel like? What did the ocean smell like? What was it like to walk in a forest or climb a mountain or feel wind on your face? Jake answered as best he could, but he realized how hard it was to describe physical sensations to someone who had never experienced them. How do you explain what rain feels like? It's wet, yes, but it's more than that. It's the smell of it, the sound of it, the way it makes everything clean and new. When they finally approached Earth, Elena pressed her face against the viewing window like a child. The blue and white planet hung in space, beautiful and fragile and home. "It's more beautiful than I imagined," she whispered. "Wait until you see it up close," Jake said. They landed at Geneva Spaceport and were immediately escorted by security to Fleet Command headquarters. Jake had never been there before. The building was massive, all glass and steel, with the flags of every Earth nation flying out front. Admiral Grant met them in a secure conference room. With her were 4 other people: General Marcus Cole from the Army, Director Patricia Wells from Earth Intelligence, Ambassador Carlos Rodriguez from the Diplomatic Corps, and Dr. Helen Foster, the Chief Science Advisor to the Defense Council. "Elena Voss," Admiral Grant said, gesturing for them to sit. "Or should I say, Lumine, thank you for coming to Earth." "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me," Elena said. She looked completely calm, but Jake could sense her nervousness. "Let's get straight to the point," General Cole said. He was a large man with a voice that filled the room. "You claim there's something called the Void that's destroying the galaxy, and you think humans can help stop it. That's a big claim." "It is," Elena agreed. "But it's true." For the next hour, Elena explained everything. She showed them data on the Void's expansion. She shared records from the Lumini's observations spanning thousands of years. She explained how every logical approach had failed and why the Lumini believed humans might succeed where others hadn't. The council members asked hard questions. They were skeptical, as Jake knew they would be. But Elena answered every question with patience and clarity. She never got defensive or frustrated. She simply presented the facts and let them draw their own conclusions. "Why didn't the galactic community warn us about this earlier?" Director Wells asked. "If this threat has been known for 50 years, why are we only hearing about it now?" "Because most species don't believe humans can help," Elena said honestly. "The elder species view humanity as primitive newcomers. They don't take your opinions seriously. They certainly wouldn't ask for your help with their greatest problem." "But you believe differently," Ambassador Rodriguez said. "Yes," Elena said firmly. "I've spent decades studying humanity. I've learned your history, your culture, your way of thinking. And I believe that what others see as human weakness is actually your greatest strength." "Which is?" Admiral Grant asked. "Hope," Elena said simply. "The ability to believe in solutions when logic says there are none. The willingness to try the impossible. The strength to create meaning in a meaningless universe. These qualities aren't weaknesses. They're the rarest and most powerful forces in existence." Dr. Foster had been quiet throughout most of the meeting, but now she spoke up. "What exactly are you proposing? What would a human solution to the Void look like?" "I don't know," Elena admitted. "That's the point. If I knew, if any logical species knew, we would have tried it already. What I'm proposing is that we assemble a human team and send them to study the Void. Not with the goal of applying existing knowledge, but with the goal of approaching it in a completely new way. The human way. You want us to send people into a region of space that destroys everything it touches," General Cole said flatly. "Based on a theory that human irrationality might somehow solve an unsolvable problem." "Yes," Elena said. The general shook his head. "That's the craziest thing I've ever heard." "I know," Elena said. "But can you afford not to try? If I'm wrong, you lose nothing that wouldn't already be lost in 200 years. But if I'm right, you might save billions of lives." The council members looked at each other. Jake could see the doubt on their faces, but also the calculation, the risk versus the reward. "Let's say we agree," Admiral Grant said slowly. "How would this work? What kind of team are you proposing?" Elena smiled. "Not the kind of team you would normally choose for a mission like this. I'm proposing a team of humans who represent what makes your species unique. Scientists who are also artists, soldiers who write poetry, engineers who compose music, philosophers who know how to fight, people who see the world not just as it is, but as it could be. That makes no sense, General Cole said. Exactly, Elena agreed. It makes no sense by galactic standards. But human history is full of moments that made no sense and yet changed everything. This is one of those moments. The meeting lasted another 2 hours. The council asked more questions, debated among themselves, and reviewed the data Elena provided. Jake mostly stayed quiet, letting Elena make her case. But when Admiral Grant asked him directly what he thought, he answered honestly. I believe her, Jake said. I've spent a week getting to know Elena. She's not manipulating us. She genuinely believes that humans can help. And I think we should try. Even if the odds are terrible, even if it seems impossible, we should try. Because that's what humans do. When the meeting finally ended, the council said they needed time to discuss it among themselves. Elena and Jake were escorted to guest quarters to wait. How do you think it went? Jake asked when they were alone. I don't know, Elena said. Your leaders are practical people. They think in terms of odds and risks and strategic value. What I'm proposing goes against all of that. But you must have convinced them a little, Jake said. They didn't dismiss it outright. That's because of you, Elena said, turning to look at him. They trust you. They know you wouldn't bring them something frivolous. Your reputation gave me credibility. Jake felt his face heat up. I just told the truth. Elena smiled and reached out to touch his face gently. Her hand was warm and real against his skin. Thank you, she said softly, for believing in me, for helping me, for seeing me as more than just an alien with an agenda. I see you as Elena, Jake said. Everything else is just details. They stood close together and Jake felt the moment stretch between them. He wanted to kiss her, had wanted to for days, but he hesitated. Was it appropriate? Was it even possible given what she really was? Elena must have sensed his thoughts because she leaned in and kissed him first. Her lips were soft and warm and human. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright. That was my first kiss, she said quietly. In this form, maybe ever, in a way that mattered. How was it? Jake asked, his voice rough. Perfect, Elena whispered. The next morning, Admiral Grant summoned them back to the conference room. The council members looked tired, like they'd been up all night debating. Jake's stomach was tight with nervous anticipation. We've made a decision, Admiral Grant said. This is probably the craziest thing the Defense Council has ever agreed to, but we're going to support your plan. Jake felt relief flood through him. Elena's expression didn't change, but he saw her hands relax slightly. However, General Cole added, there are conditions. First, this mission will be under human command. We're not sending our people into danger under alien authority, even friendly alien authority. Understood, Elena said. Second, Director Wells continued, we need full transparency. Every piece of data the Lumini have on the Void, every observation, every failed attempt by other species, we need it all. You'll have it, Elena promised. Third, Ambassador Rodriguez said, this needs approval from the galactic community. We can't just send a human ship into a crisis zone without clearance. It would cause diplomatic problems we can't afford. The Lumini will handle that, Elena said. We have authority among the elder species. They may not like it, but they'll allow it. And finally, Admiral Grant said, looking directly at Jake, Lieutenant Morrison will be part of the mission command structure. He's the liaison between human and Lumini forces, and he understands both sides better than anyone else we have. Jake's eyes widened. Ma'am, I'm not qualified to... You're exactly qualified, the Admiral interrupted. You understand people, Morrison. You build bridges. That's what this mission needs more than tactical expertise or scientific knowledge. We'll assign people who have those skills, but you're the one who'll keep them all working together." Jake looked at Elena, who nodded slightly. "Okay," he said. "I'm in." "Good," Admiral Grant said. "Now let's figure out how to save the galaxy." The next 3 months were a blur of activity. The Defense Council approved funding and resources for the mission. A ship was commissioned, specially designed for the task. They called it the Wanderer, and it was unlike any ship Earth had built before. The Wanderer was built using both human and alien technology. The hull was constructed with materials provided by 3 different species, making it resistant to extreme conditions. The engines were human-designed, but enhanced with Lumini energy systems. And most unusually, the ship included spaces that seemed to serve no practical purpose: art studios, music rooms, gardens, observation lounges. "Other species think these spaces are wasteful," Elena explained as they toured the ship during construction. "They don't understand why humans need beauty and creativity even on a military mission. But that's exactly why this might work. You carry your humanity with you, even into the darkest places." Assembling the crew was harder than building the ship. Admiral Grant put together a selection committee, but they struggled with Elena's requirements. How do you choose a crew based on creativity rather than qualifications? "Stop thinking about this like a military operation," Jake suggested during one frustrating meeting. "Think about it like assembling a band. You don't want everyone to play the same instrument perfectly. You want different people who complement each other and create something new together." That changed the approach. Instead of looking for the best pilots or the best scientists, they started looking for people who were multiple things at once. A physicist who painted in her free time. A Marine who wrote poetry about his deployments. An engineer who composed electronic music. A medic who practiced philosophy. They found Commander Scott Hayes, a pilot with 15 years of experience who also had a degree in literature and spent his leave time visiting art museums. He would command the ship. They found Dr. Maya Patel, a quantum physicist who created detailed mathematical models but also sculpted and said that art helped her understand the universe better. They found Lieutenant Nick Carson, a Marine Force reconnaissance specialist who kept journals of his missions written as detailed narrative stories. They found engineer Kate Sullivan, who designed propulsion systems and also played 6 instruments, and believed that music and mathematics were the same language expressed differently. They found Dr. Chris Tucker, a medical officer who had published papers on trauma treatment and also wrote philosophical essays about the nature of consciousness and existence. And they found others, each one unique, each one representing a different way of being human. The crew numbered 25 people in total, including Jake and Elena. It was smaller than a typical deep space mission crew, but that was intentional. They needed to work closely, to know each other well, to become more than just a crew. During the crew training period, Jake watched Elena interact with each team member. She asked them questions, learned their stories, understood what made each of them unique. The crew was initially suspicious of her, knowing she was an alien despite her human appearance. But gradually, her genuine curiosity and respect won them over. Commander Hayes was the last to fully accept her. He pulled Jake aside one day during training exercises. "Can we trust her?" Hayes asked bluntly. "Really trust her? Because once we're out there, in the void's proximity, we're dependent on Lumini data and support. If this is some kind of setup or manipulation..." "It's not," Jake said firmly. "I'd stake my life on it. Elena cares about this mission succeeding. She cares about humanity." "Why?" Hayes asked. "What's in it for the Lumini?" Jake thought about how to explain it. "The Lumini have spent millions of years observing civilizations. They've seen thousands of species rise and fall, and somewhere along the way, they lost something. They became pure observers, pure logic, pure efficiency. They forgot what it means to hope or dream or create for the joy of creation." He paused, choosing his words carefully. Elena sees something in humanity that her species lost a long time ago. She's not using us. She's learning from us. And she believes that what we have is rare enough and valuable enough that it's worth saving. Hayes studied him for a long moment. You care about her, not just as an ally, as a person. Yes, Jake admitted. Does she care about you the same way? I think so, Jake said. But honestly, I'm not sure she fully understands what that means yet. She's learning what emotions feel like in real time. It's complicated. Hayes nodded slowly. Just make sure it doesn't compromise the mission. We're trusting you to keep things professional when it matters. I will, Jake promised. As the departure date approached, Jake and Elena spent more time together. They walked through Geneva at night, and Jake showed her Earth's beauty, the way lights reflected on water, the sound of languages mixing together in crowded streets. The smell of food from dozens of different cultures, the casual way humans touched each other, a hand on an arm, a hug between friends, strangers helping each other without being asked. Your species is so physical, Elena observed. You communicate as much through touch as through words. Does it bother you? Jake asked. They were walking through a park, and without thinking, he'd taken her hand. It felt natural now. No, Elena said. It's wonderful. It's intimate in a way that pure thought communication isn't. When you touch someone, you're sharing physical space. You're acknowledging that you both exist in the same reality. It's profound. One night, a week before launch, they sat together on the balcony of Jake's temporary quarters. Geneva spread out below them, lights glowing against the darkness. In the sky, stars shone faintly through the light pollution. Are you scared? Elena asked quietly. Yes, Jake admitted. We're flying into something that has destroyed everything that's touched it. We have no plan except to try things that don't make sense. And if we fail, we probably won't come back. Do you regret agreeing to go? Jake thought about it. No. If humans have a chance to help, even a small chance, we should take it. That's who we are. We try, even when it seems hopeless. Especially when it seems hopeless. Elena rested her head against his shoulder. I chose the right person to believe in, she said softly. You believe in all of humanity, Jake said. I'm just one example. You're the example that made me certain, Elena corrected. When I created this form and came to that station, I wasn't sure. I had studied humans for decades, but observation isn't the same as experience. I needed to interact with a human, really interact, to know if my theory was right. And? Jake asked. You proved it, Elena said. Every conversation, every moment we spent together, you showed me what makes humans unique. You see beauty first. You create meaning out of nothing. You hope when you should despair. You love knowing you'll lose what you love. You face impossible odds with nothing but determination and creativity. That's not weakness. That's the most powerful force I've ever encountered. Jake kissed the top of her head. Let's hope it's powerful enough. The day of departure came too quickly. The crew gathered at the Geneva spaceport, where the Wanderer waited. Families and friends came to see them off. The mood was strange, part celebration, part funeral. Everyone knew the crew might not return. Admiral Grant gave a speech about courage and sacrifice and representing the best of humanity. Jake barely heard it. He was focused on the ship, on the crew, on the impossible task ahead of them. When it was time to board, Jake turned to take one last look at Earth. The planet hung in the sky, blue and beautiful and home. He wondered if he'd see it again. Elena stood beside him. Thank you, she said quietly, for everything, for believing, for helping, for showing me what it means to be human. We haven't done anything yet, Jake said. Yes, you have, Elena said. You've already proven that humans are worth saving. Now we just need to prove that you can save yourselves. They boarded the Wanderer together, and the ship lifted smoothly into space. Earth grew smaller behind them, then disappeared as they jumped through the first gate toward the galactic frontier, toward the void, toward the impossible. Jake stood on the bridge next to Commander Hayes. The crew worked efficiently at their stations, checking systems and running diagnostics. They looked confident, professional, ready. But Jake knew the truth. They were making this up as they went along. They had no real plan, no proven strategy. Nothing but hope and creativity and the stubborn human refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. It would have to be enough. It had to be. The journey to the void's edge took 2 weeks through a series of jump gates. The Wanderer traveled through parts of the galaxy Jake had never seen, passing systems where alien civilizations had built impossible structures that made human achievements look primitive by comparison. Elena spent much of the journey briefing the crew on everything the Lumini had learned about the void. She showed them sensor data, shared observations from dozens of different species, explained every failed attempt to stop or slow its expansion. The void appeared 50 years ago in a region of space that was previously empty, Elena explained during one briefing. It started as a small area, maybe a light year across, but it's grown steadily. It now covers nearly 10,000 cubic light years and continues to expand. Dr. Patel studied the data with intense focus. What happens when matter enters it? She asked. It ceases to exist, Elena said simply. Not destroyed in the traditional sense. Destruction leaves evidence, energy, radiation, debris. The void leaves nothing. Matter enters it and is gone, as if it never existed. That violates conservation of mass energy, Dr. Patel said. Yes, Elena agreed. It violates several fundamental physical laws, which is why purely physical approaches don't work. What about energy beings like yourself? Jake asked. What happens if a Lumini enters the void? Elena's expression became distant. We tried. 30 years ago, one of our eldest volunteered to enter it. We lost contact immediately. They didn't report pain or destruction. They simply stopped existing. We felt them disappear from reality. The crew was silent, processing that. Commander Hayes spoke up. If energy, matter, and consciousness all get destroyed, what makes you think anything we do will matter? Because you're going to try things that shouldn't work, Elena said. The Varillian Empire sent in their most advanced warships with weapons that could destroy stars. Gone. The collective mind tried to flood it with pure thought, hoping consciousness could survive where matter couldn't. Gone. The architects built a containment device using technology beyond human understanding. Gone. Every logical approach failed, because they all tried to fight it or contain it or analyze it as if it was a problem that could be solved through force or reason. And our approach? Engineer Sullivan asked. You're going to approach it as humans approach everything, Elena said, with curiosity, creativity, and the assumption that there's always another way. You're going to treat it not as an enemy to defeat, but as a mystery to understand. You're going to create in response to it, make meaning in the face of it, hope despite it. Lieutenant Carson, the Marine who wrote stories, raised his hand. I'm sorry, but that sounds like feel-good nonsense. We're going to defeat an unstoppable force of destruction with good vibes and positive thinking. No, Elena said patiently. You're going to approach it with the full depth of human experience, logic and emotion, analysis and intuition, science and art. You're going to bring everything that makes you human, not just the parts that other species respect, because those are the parts that might actually work. The briefings continued, but Jake noticed something. The crew was starting to bond in a way that transcended normal military camaraderie. They shared meals together, played music together, talked about their lives and fears and hopes. They were becoming something more than a crew. They were becoming a community. One evening, Jake found Dr. Tucker in one of the observation lounges, staring out at the stars while writing in a journal. "What are you working on?" Jake asked, sitting down nearby. "Philosophical notes," Tucker said, "trying to understand what the void means. If it's really something that erases existence itself, what does that say about the nature of reality? About consciousness? About meaning?" "Any conclusions?" Jake asked. Tucker smiled wryly. "Nothing useful. But I realized something. The void scares me less than the idea of never having existed at all. At least if I die in there, I will have lived. I will have mattered. Even if only for a short time." "That's very human," Jake said. "Maybe that's the point," Tucker said. "Other species might see death as a failure or an inefficiency, but humans have always known we're temporary. Maybe that's why we're so desperate to make meaning, to create things that last longer than we do, to love and hope and fight even when we know we'll lose eventually. We're all racing against our own mortality. The void is just a bigger, faster version of what we all face anyway." Jake thought about that. "So how do we fight something that represents the ultimate version of what we already fear?" "We don't fight it," Tucker said. "We show it what it's destroying. We show it why existence matters, not through logic or force, but through the evidence of our own lives, through art and music and stories and love and all the messy, beautiful things that make life worth living." Over the next several days, something shifted in the crew's approach. Instead of training for combat or scientific analysis, they started creating. Dr. Patel worked on mathematical proofs that she turned into visual art. Engineer Sullivan composed music based on the ship's engine harmonics. Lieutenant Carson wrote detailed accounts of the journey, capturing not just facts, but feelings and fears and hopes. Commander Hayes initially resisted this shift. "We're on a military mission," he said during one crew meeting. "This isn't summer camp." "Isn't it, though?" Dr. Patel challenged. "Elena said we're supposed to approach this as humans, using everything that makes us unique. Our ability to create meaning is part of that. If we show up at the void acting like every other logical, military species that's already failed, why would we expect a different result?" Hayes looked at Jake. "What do you think?" Jake chose his words carefully. "I think we were chosen specifically because we're not just military or just scientists. We're people who see the world in multiple ways at once. If we limit ourselves to one mode of thinking, we're wasting our potential." Hayes was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "Okay. But we maintain combat readiness and scientific rigor alongside the creative work. We don't know what we'll face, and I want options." "Agreed," Jake said. Elena watched these discussions with fascination. She spent hours observing the crew work, asking questions, understanding how they thought and felt and created. Jake noticed she was changing too. She smiled more easily now. She laughed at jokes. She seemed more comfortable in her human form, less like an observer and more like a participant. One night, Jake found her in the ship's small garden, a hydroponics bay that grew vegetables, but also flowers that served no practical purpose except beauty. Elena was touching the petals of a rose, her expression wonderstruck. "I've observed flowers for decades," she said when she noticed Jake. "But I never touched one before. It's so delicate, so temporary. It will die in days, and yet humans cultivate them anyway, just for their beauty." "Is that strange?" Jake asked. "It's magnificent," Elena said. "Most species only create what's useful. Only humans create things solely because they're beautiful, knowing they'll be gone soon. It's defiant. You're saying that temporary beauty still matters, that brief existence is still worthwhile." She turned to look at him. "That's what we're going to show the void, isn't it? That existence doesn't have to be eternal to be meaningful." "I hope so," Jake said. Elena stepped closer to him. "I need to tell you something. It's about my feelings for you." Jake's heart beat faster. "Okay." "I've been trying to understand what I feel," Elena said. In Lumini existence, we don't have emotions the way humans do. We have preferences, curiosities, purposes, but not feelings in the human sense. Creating this form, experiencing human existence, has changed that. I feel things now. Fear, wonder, joy, and when I'm with you, I feel something else. Something I think humans call love. You think? Jake said, trying to keep his tone light even though his heart was pounding. I'm not certain, Elena admitted. I have no previous experience to compare it to, but from what I've learned about human love, I believe this is it. You make existence feel more meaningful. When I'm with you, I understand why humans fight so hard to preserve life, because moments like this, standing in a garden talking about flowers and feelings, are worth preserving. Jake took her hands. I love you too, he said. I know you're not human, not really. I know this form is something you created, but the person inside it, the consciousness I've gotten to know, that's who I love. Not the form. You. Elena's eyes filled with tears, a very human reaction. I'm so glad you whispered those words that first night, she said. I'm so glad you saw beauty in me before you knew what I was. It made everything else possible. They kissed. And it was different from before. Not just physical contact, but genuine connection. Two beings from different worlds, finding meaning in each other. The next day, the Wanderer reached the edge of the Void's observation zone. Dozens of automated stations maintained by various species formed a perimeter around the affected area. The stations monitored the Void's expansion, collected data, and warned ships away from danger. Commander Hayes brought the Wanderer to a stop at one of the checkpoints. An alien voice came through the communication system, speaking in translated standard galactic language. Unidentified vessel, you are approaching a level 10 hazard zone. Turn back immediately. This is Commander Scott Hayes of the human vessel Wanderer. We have authorization from the Lumini to approach the Void. Transmitting credentials now. There was a pause. Then a different voice came through, this one sounding surprised. Human vessel? The Lumini have authorized humans to approach the Void? That's correct, Hayes confirmed. Another pause, longer this time. Your credentials are valid, but I must protest this decision. Sending a species as inexperienced as humanity into the Void is irresponsible. You lack the technology, the knowledge, and the experience to survive here. Noted, Hayes said calmly, but we're going anyway. This is suicide, the alien said flatly. Maybe, Hayes agreed, but it's our choice to make. The checkpoint reluctantly cleared them to proceed. As the Wanderer moved past the perimeter, the crew fell silent. Ahead of them, space looked normal at first. Stars, nebulae, the usual beauty of the cosmos. But at the edge of visual range, there was something else, an absence, a place where stars should be but weren't, the Void. Dr. Patel pulled up sensor readings. I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies, radiation that doesn't match any known spectrum, and areas where sensors just stop working, like they're trying to measure something that isn't there. How close are we getting? Engineer Sullivan asked nervously. Within 1 light year, Elena said, close enough to study it properly but far enough that we should be safe. The Void's expansion is slow and steady. At current rates, it grows about 1 light year per decade. Lieutenant Carson was recording everything with both the ship's sensors and his personal camera. For the historical record, he explained, if we make it back, people need to know what we saw. The Wanderer continued forward for another day, moving slowly and carefully. The Void grew larger in their sensors and eventually became visible to the naked eye. It was like looking at a hole in reality, a place where everything just stopped. No stars shone in the Void, no light escaped it or reflected from it. It was perfectly, absolutely absent. Looking at it made Jake's brain hurt, like trying to conceive of true nothingness. This is as close as we go, Commander Hayes announced when they were about 1 light-year from the void's edge. "We hold position here and begin observations." For 3 days, the crew studied the void. They ran every scan they could think of. They analyzed the data from previous expeditions. They looked for patterns, anomalies, anything that might give them insight into what the void actually was. And they found nothing useful. The void was exactly what it appeared to be, nothing. An absence so complete, it defied understanding. On the 4th day, the crew gathered for a meeting. Everyone looked frustrated and tired. They'd come all this way, risked everything, and had nothing to show for it. "We're not getting anywhere with conventional approaches," Dr. Patel said. "Every scan just tells us what the void isn't. We need a different strategy." "Such as?" Hayes asked. Everyone looked at Elena. She'd been quiet during the observation period, watching the void with an expression Jake couldn't read. "Such as treating it not as a scientific phenomenon, but as a being," Elena said finally. "What?" Hayes said. Elena stood up and walked to the window. The void stretched beyond it, vast and terrible. "I've been sensing something," she said quietly. "The Lumini are energy beings. We perceive things differently than physical species do, and when I focus on the void, I feel something. Not consciousness exactly, not intelligence in the traditional sense, but something that's almost like loneliness." "The void is lonely?" Lieutenant Carson said skeptically. "I know it sounds absurd," Elena said, "but think about it. What if the void isn't a weapon or a natural disaster? What if it's alive? What if it's the last remnant of a species that transcended physical form billions of years ago, and in transcending, lost something essential?" "Lost what?" Jake asked. Elena turned to face them. "Meaning, purpose, connection. The void doesn't destroy things because it's hostile. It destroys them because it no longer remembers why anything should exist. It's been alone for so long, detached from meaning for so long, that it's forgotten what makes existence worthwhile." The crew was silent, processing this. It sounded crazy, but it also somehow felt right. "If that's true," Dr. Tucker said slowly, "then we can't fight it. You can't fight loneliness with weapons. You can't logic away an existential crisis." "No," Elena agreed. "But you can remind someone why existence matters. You can show them beauty and meaning and connection. You can make them remember." "How?" Dr. Patel asked. Everyone looked at each other. Then, slowly, they started to understand. "We show it what it's destroying," Jake said. "Not through data or logic, through art, through music, through stories. Through everything we've created on this journey." "We make it personal," Engineer Sullivan added. "We show it what human existence looks like, what we create, what we love, what we hope for." "We offer it connection," Dr. Tucker said. "We show it that it's not alone. That existence can have meaning if you choose to make meaning." Commander Hayes looked around at his crew. "This is what we came here to do," he said. "This is the human approach. It's crazy and illogical and might not work at all, but it's what we've got." "Then let's do it," Jake said. Over the next week, the crew of the Wanderer created. They created like their lives depended on it, because maybe they did. They created like the galaxy depended on it, because it did. Dr. Patel composed mathematical proofs that described the beauty of existence. Equations that showed how complexity arose from simplicity, how meaning could be generated from randomness. She turned them into visual art, projections of light and color that expressed concepts words couldn't capture. Engineer Sullivan created music. Not just any music, but compositions that incorporated sounds from Earth, waves on beaches, rain in forests, wind through canyons, human voices laughing and singing. She wove it all together with instrumental pieces that swelled with emotion, joy and sorrow, hope and fear, triumph and loss. Lieutenant Carson wrote stories. He wrote about human history, about the struggles and victories that defined their species. He wrote about individuals, people who'd lived and loved and lost and kept going anyway. He wrote about meaning made in the face of chaos, hope maintained despite logic, love given freely even knowing it would end. Dr. Tucker composed philosophical essays about why existence mattered, not in abstract terms but in concrete ones. Existence mattered because of specific moments, a child's laugh, a perfect sunset, a conversation between friends, the first bite of a favorite food, the feeling of being understood, the warmth of connection. The other crew members contributed too. Personal recordings of their lives, pictures of people they loved, memories shared aloud and recorded, laughter and arguments and tears and triumphs. They created a comprehensive portrait of human existence in all its messy, beautiful, contradictory glory. And Elena watched it all, her expression filled with wonder. "This is what I've been trying to understand," she said to Jake one night. "This is what makes humans unique. You're all temporary, all fragile, all painfully aware of your mortality, and instead of despairing, you create meaning anyway. You love anyway. You hope anyway. It's the most courageous thing I've ever witnessed." When they finished, they had created hours of content. Art and music and stories and philosophy and raw human experience, all compiled and ready. "Now what?" Hayes asked. "Now we broadcast it," Elena said. "We send everything we've created directly into the void. Not as data, but as communication, as an offering, as a reminder of why existence is worth preserving." "Will it work?" someone asked. "I don't know," Elena admitted. "But if the void is what I think it is, if it's a conscious being that's forgotten meaning, then maybe this will help it remember. Maybe showing it what human existence looks like will remind it of what it once had and lost." Hayes looked at his crew. They looked back, faces determined. "Okay," he said. "Let's do it." They positioned the Wanderer as close to the void as they dared. Engineer Sullivan set up the broadcast equipment. Dr. Patel verified the signal strength. Lieutenant Carson queued up the content. Jake stood next to Elena on the bridge, their hands clasped together. "If this doesn't work," he said quietly, "I want you to know—" "It will work," Elena interrupted. "It has to, because the alternative is unthinkable." Commander Hayes gave the order. "Begin transmission." The Wanderer began broadcasting everything they'd created directly into the void. Art and music and stories and philosophy and raw humanity, sent into the ultimate darkness with one simple message attached. This is why we exist. This is why anything should exist. Not because it's logical, not because it's efficient, but because it's worth it. Because existence is beautiful and terrible and wonderful and painful and absolutely worth experiencing. Because love and hope and creation matter, even if they're temporary. Because we choose to make meaning, and that choice is the most powerful thing in the universe. For a moment, nothing happened. The void remained unchanged, a vast absence consuming space. Then something shifted. It was subtle at first. Sensors began picking up fluctuations at the void's edge. Small at first, then growing. The perfect absence began to ripple, like water disturbed by a stone. "Something's happening," Dr. Patel said, her voice shaking. "The void is responding." Everyone watched the sensors, afraid to hope. The fluctuations grew stronger, and then, impossibly, the void began to contract. Slowly at first, a few kilometers, then a few more, then faster. The absence that had consumed stars began to shrink, pulling back from the space it had claimed. "It's working," Elena whispered, tears streaming down her face. "It's remembering." The void continued to contract, not disappearing entirely, but transforming. Where there had been absolute nothing, possibilities began to form. Not matter exactly, not energy, but something else. potential, the raw material of existence beginning to coalesce. The broadcast continued, and the void responded. Hours passed, then days. The crew watched in awe as an unstoppable force reversed itself, as the impossible happened. After 3 days, the void had contracted to a fraction of its original size. It still existed, but it was no longer expanding. It had stopped destroying and started transforming, becoming something new. Elena collapsed in Jake's arms, exhausted. "We did it," she whispered. "Humanity did it." "What happened?" Jake asked. "What did we show it?" "You reminded it why existence matters," Elena said. "The void was once part of a species that transcended everything, matter, energy, time itself. But in transcending, they lost their connection to meaning. They forgot what makes existence worthwhile. They became so evolved, so perfect, so logical, that they no longer understood why anything should exist at all. And so they began unmaking reality, erasing what they saw as meaningless." She looked up at him. "But you showed them they were wrong. You showed them that existence doesn't need to be eternal or perfect to be meaningful. That temporary, messy, illogical life is still worth living. That beauty and love and hope matter, even if they don't last forever. You taught an ancient, transcendent being what a young, primitive species never forgot, that choosing to make meaning is the point." The galactic community watched in stunned silence as humanity accomplished what no other species had managed. News spread quickly. The primitive newcomers, the emotional and illogical humans, had stopped the void. Not through superior technology, not through ancient wisdom, but through the sheer, stubborn human belief that existence was worth celebrating. That meaning could be made. That hope was never truly irrational. Overnight, humanity's status in the galactic community transformed. They were no longer dismissed as primitive newcomers. They were teachers of something the elder species had forgotten over millions of years of logical evolution. The Wanderer received thousands of messages from across the galaxy, some congratulating them, some demanding to know how they did it, some simply saying thank you. Commander Hayes called the crew together one final time before they began the journey home. "What we did here will change everything," he said, "not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. We proved that what others saw as weaknesses were actually strengths. That emotion and creativity and hope are not inefficient or illogical. They're powerful forces that can achieve the impossible." He looked around at each of them. "You should all be proud. You represented humanity at its best. You showed the galaxy what we're capable of when we bring our whole selves to a problem, not just the parts that others respect." As the Wanderer prepared to depart, Jake and Elena stood together at the observation window one last time. The void, now transformed and no longer threatening, shimmered in the distance like a promise of new possibilities. "What will you do now?" Jake asked Elena. "Will you return to the Lumini?" "Eventually," Elena said, "but not yet. I want to stay in this form longer. I want to experience more of human existence. I want to continue learning what it means to feel and hope and love." "And us?" Jake asked quietly. Elena smiled and took his hand. "I don't know what the future holds. I'm still learning what love means, what commitment means, what forever means to humans. But I know that I want to find out. With you." They kissed, and in that kiss was everything that had brought them together. Two beings from different worlds, finding meaning in each other, finding hope in connection, finding beauty in the impossible. The Wanderer turned toward home, carrying a crew that had saved the galaxy not through force or brilliance, but through the simple human act of creating meaning in the face of darkness. Behind them, the transformed void began something new. Not destruction, but creation. Not absence, but potential. A reminder that even the oldest, most powerful beings in the universe could learn something from humanity's stubborn refusal to accept that anything was truly meaningless. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, ancient consciousnesses that had forgotten why anything mattered began to remember, began to hope, began to create again. All because a young species looked at the impossible and said, "We can try." All because humans believed that existence, in all its temporary and messy glory, was worth fighting for. All because Jake Morrison whispered about beauty to a stunning woman who turned slowly to face him, and in that moment, two worlds began to understand each other. That moment of recognition, of seeing and being seen, had rippled outward, had changed everything, had reminded the universe that connection, creativity, and hope were not weaknesses to be transcended, but strengths to be celebrated. As Earth appeared in their view screen weeks later, Jake realized something. The journey hadn't just saved the galaxy, it had saved him too, had given him purpose and meaning and love beyond anything he'd imagined possible. Elena stood beside him, her hand in his, her face turned toward humanity's home. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Yes," Jake agreed. "It is." And in that simple moment of shared wonder, in the quiet acknowledgement of beauty for its own sake, the human story continued, messy and emotional and illogical and absolutely worth preserving, forever.